The Velthari Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their ships were made of living crystal that could heal itself after battle. Their weapons could turn entire planets into dust. No species had ever stood against them and survived. The Velthari believed they were the greatest civilization in the galaxy, and for a very long time, they were right. High Admiral Zyrith sat in his command chair aboard the Eternal Light, watching the stars pass by through the massive window in front of him. His pale blue skin reflected the glow of distant suns. His 4 eyes scanned the data screens that floated in the air around him. A new signal had been detected from a small planet in an unremarkable solar system. The planet was called Earth by its inhabitants. The signal was primitive: radio waves, music and voices, and strange entertainment broadcasts. Zyrith laughed when his scientists analyzed the data. These humans had only discovered space travel recently. They had a few dozen ships at most. They would be easy to conquer. He sent 300 warships. It was far more than necessary. But Zyrith wanted to make a statement. New species needed to learn their place quickly. Resistance was pointless against the Velthari Empire. Commander Daniel Carter was having a normal day when everything changed. He was 42 years old, with gray starting to show in his short brown hair. He had served in the United Earth Space Force for 20 years, working his way up from a young pilot to the commander of the USS Resolute. His ship was small compared to what he was about to face. It carried a crew of 200 and was designed for patrol missions, not combat. Daniel was drinking coffee in his ready room when the alarm sounded. His first officer, Lieutenant Kate Morrison, contacted him immediately. Kate was 35. With red hair she kept tied back in a tight bun. She was the best tactical officer Daniel had ever worked with. "Commander, we have contacts," Kate said, her voice tense. "A lot of contacts. Over 300 unknown vessels just appeared near Jupiter." Daniel felt his stomach drop. He rushed to the bridge and looked at the main screen. The alien ships were beautiful, in a terrifying way. They looked like giant crystals floating in space, each one glowing with internal light. They were also enormous. The smallest was twice the size of the Resolute. "Open a channel," Daniel ordered. "All frequencies." He spoke calmly, introducing himself and humanity. He offered peace and friendship. He asked the alien fleet to identify themselves. The response came in broken English, translated by some kind of computer. "You are now property of the Velthari Empire. Surrender your world. Resistance means death." Daniel looked at Kate. Kate looked back at him. Neither of them spoke, but they understood each other perfectly. Surrender was not an option. "Send a warning to Earth Command," Daniel said quietly. "Tell them what's coming." Before the message could finish transmitting, 2 escort frigates near the Resolute exploded. The Velthari had fired without any additional warning. Bright beams of energy cut through the human ships like they were made of paper. 300 crew members died in an instant. Something changed in Daniel at that moment. Fear turned into cold determination. If he was going to die today, he would die fighting. "All power to engines," he commanded. "Take us straight at them." Kate stared at him. "Sir, that's suicide." "Maybe," Daniel replied. "But our weapons can't reach them from here. We need to get close." The Resolute shot forward, its engines burning at maximum power. The alien fleet did not react at first. Why would they? One tiny ship against 300 was not a threat. It was a joke. High Admiral Zyrith watched the human vessel charge toward his fleet. He felt something close to pity. These creatures were brave but foolish. He ordered his ships to destroy it, expecting the battle to end in seconds. The first Velthari shots hit the Resolute's shields. The ship shook violently. Consoles exploded. Crew members were thrown from their seats. But the shields held, barely. Daniel gripped his chair as the ship rocked. "Return fire." The Resolute's plasma cannons were experimental technology. Human scientists had developed them only 3 years ago. They were unstable, dangerous, and often unreliable. They were also completely unlike anything the Velthari had ever encountered. The first shot hit a Velthari cruiser directly in its center. The alien ship's shields flickered strangely, then failed completely. The plasma burned through the crystal hull like fire through ice. The cruiser exploded. Xyrith sat up straight in his chair. That was impossible. Human weapons should not be able to penetrate Velthari shields. Their technology was too primitive, but another Velthari ship exploded. Then another. The Resolute weaved through the enemy formation, firing constantly. Kate Morrison worked the weapons console with desperate speed, finding weak points in the alien shields. The human plasma weapons seemed to ignore the Velthari defenses. Each shot that hit caused massive damage. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it ended, 18 Velthari ships had been destroyed. The rest of the fleet retreated, jumping to faster-than-light speed and fleeing the solar system. The Resolute floated alone in space, surrounded by debris. Half of its crew was dead. The hull had dozens of holes. Life support was failing. But they had won. Daniel sat in his damaged chair, staring at the screen. He could not believe what had just happened. His small ship had defeated an invasion fleet. It seemed like a dream. Kate approached him slowly. Her face was covered in blood from a cut on her forehead. Her hands were shaking. "Commander," she whispered. "What did we just do?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we just started a war." Back on the Eternal Light, High Admiral Xyrith stood in silence. His officers waited for him to speak, but he had no words. For the first time in his 300 years of life, he had experienced true defeat. He thought about the human ship, so small and fragile. He thought about its weapons, so crude and chaotic. Somehow, that chaos had been their strength. Velthari shields were designed to stop precise energy attacks. They could not handle the unpredictable nature of human plasma technology. Xyrith made a decision. The Emperor needed to know about this immediately. These humans were not like other species. They were dangerous. On Earth, people looked up at the night sky without knowing how close they had come to extinction. But in the command centers of the United Earth government, alarms were ringing. Messages were being decoded. Leaders were gathering for emergency meetings. Humanity had made first contact with alien life. That contact had been violent. And somewhere out there, an ancient empire was preparing to respond. The war for survival had begun. The crystal palace of Emperor Valdrix stood at the center of the Velthari homeworld. It had been built 10,000 years ago, from a single, massive gemstone. Light passed through its walls and created rainbows that danced across the floor. It was the most beautiful building in the galaxy. Today, it was filled with fear. Emperor Valdrix sat on his throne made of pure starlight. He was ancient, over 2,000 years old. With skin so pale, it was almost white. His 4 eyes burned with cold anger as he listened to High Admiral Xyrith explain what had happened. 18 ships, Valdrix said slowly. You lost 18 ships to a single primitive vessel. Xyrith lowered his head. Yes, my Emperor. Their weapons were unlike anything we have encountered. Our shields could not stop them. The gathered admirals and generals whispered among themselves. This was unheard of. The Velthari had conquered over 500 species. None had ever destroyed even one of their warships in a first engagement. These humans had destroyed 18. Grand Marshal Thesson stepped forward. She was the highest-ranking military officer in the Empire, responsible for strategy and planning. Her voice was calm but serious. I have studied the sensor data from the battle. The human weapons use a form of plasma that is highly unstable. Our shields are designed to deflect organized energy patterns. The chaos of their weapons allows them to slip through. Then adapt our shields, Valdrix commanded. It is not that simple, Thesson replied. Reorganizing our shield technology would take years, perhaps decades. We would need to redesign every ship in our fleet. Valdrix slammed his fist on the arm of his throne. The sound echoed through the palace. Then, we overwhelm them with numbers. Send 1,000 ships. Send 2,000. Crush this species before they become a real threat. Thesson nodded. I will prepare the invasion fleet immediately. But I must warn you, my Emperor. If their weapons technology spreads to other species we have conquered, we may face rebellion across the Empire. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Then we must destroy Earth quickly and completely. No survivors. No records. The galaxy must never know that humans existed. Far away, on the blue planet called Earth, humanity was preparing for the fight of its life. Admiral Patricia Lane stood before the United Nations Emergency Council. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and a face marked by decades of military service. She had commanded ships, led battles, and made impossible decisions. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. 3 days ago, Commander Daniel Carter engaged an alien invasion fleet near Jupiter, she said. Against all odds, he achieved victory. But this was just the first wave. Our intelligence suggests a much larger force is being assembled. The council members looked at each other with worried faces. The president of the United Earth Government, a man named Harold Bennett, spoke first. How large? We estimate at least 2,000 ships, Patricia replied. Possibly more. Silence filled the room. Earth had 47 combat-capable vessels. The math was simple and terrifying. What options do we have? Bennett asked. Patricia took a deep breath. We have one option. The Prometheus Project. She activated a holographic display. A massive ship appeared. Unlike anything ever built by human hands. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons. Its design was aggressive and powerful. Dr. Ryan Mitchell and his team have been working on this concept for 5 years, Patricia explained. A new class of battleship that combines our plasma technology with reverse-engineered alien systems recovered from the recent battle. If we accelerate production, we can have it operational in 18 months. 18 months, Bennett repeated. Will the aliens wait that long? No, Patricia admitted. We will have to hold them off with everything we have until then. It will cost lives. Many lives. But it is our only chance. The council voted unanimously to approve the project. Resources from every nation on Earth were redirected to the Neptune orbital shipyard. The greatest construction effort in human history began. Commander Daniel Carter received his new orders while still recovering in a hospital bed. He had broken ribs, a fractured skull, and burns across 30% of his body. The doctors wanted him to rest for months. Daniel refused. They want me to oversee construction, he told Kate Morrison, who sat beside his bed. She had her own bandages but had insisted on staying with her commander. They say I understand alien combat better than anyone. Kate smiled weakly. That's because you're crazy enough to fly directly at 300 enemy ships. Daniel laughed, then winced at the pain. It worked, didn't it? He was promoted to captain and transferred to Neptune. Kate was promoted to commander and assigned as his executive officer. Together, they would build humanity's greatest weapon. The shipyard orbited Neptune like a metal moon. Thousands of workers lived there, constructing ships around the clock. When Daniel arrived, he found organized chaos. Engineers argued about designs. Welders worked in zero gravity. Scientists tested new systems that sometimes exploded. Chief Engineer Scott Palmer met Daniel at the docking bay. Scott was a large man, with thick arms and a beard that violated military regulations. He was also the most brilliant engineer Earth had ever produced. Captain, Scott said, shaking Daniel's hand firmly. Welcome to the madhouse. Let me show you what we're building. They walked through the shipyard until they reached a massive construction bay. There, surrounded by scaffolding and robotic arms, was the skeleton of the new battleship. We're calling it the Defiance, Scott said proudly. She'll be 3 kilometers long when finished. Her hull is made from a new metamaterial that can absorb and redirect energy. Her power core combines human fusion reactors with captured alien crystal matrices, and her weapons. He grinned. Let's just say the aliens are going to have a very bad day. Daniel stared at the half-built ship. It was beautiful and terrifying. A machine designed for one purpose: to kill. What about the crew? He asked. That's your job, Scott replied. We need 800 of the best people Earth can offer. Pilots, gunners, engineers, everyone. And they need to be ready to die if necessary. Daniel nodded slowly. He understood. This was not just a ship. It was a symbol, a message to the galaxy that humanity would not surrender, would not submit, would not go quietly into extinction. In the following weeks, Daniel selected his crew carefully. He chose people who had lost family in the first attack, people who had volunteered for dangerous missions, people who understood what was at stake and accepted the risks. Meanwhile, reports came in from the edge of the solar system. Scout ships detected Velthari probes watching Earth from a distance. The enemy was gathering information, planning their next attack. Time was running out. Dr. Amanda Chen, the lead weapons scientist, worked day and night to perfect the new weapon systems. She was young, only 32, but her mind worked faster than anyone Daniel had ever met. She developed something called the Cascade Driver, a weapon that fired projectiles at nearly the speed of light while destabilizing the target at a molecular level. One shot can disable a ship 10 times our size, Amanda explained, her eyes red from lack of sleep. In theory. Theory? Daniel raised an eyebrow. Amanda shrugged. We haven't exactly had a chance to test it on real targets, but the simulations look promising. Daniel looked out the window at the growing ship. 18 months. That was all they had. 18 months to build the impossible, train a crew, and prepare for an enemy that had conquered the galaxy. But as he watched the workers crawling over the Defiance like ants on a giant metal beast, he felt something he hadn't felt since the battle. Hope. Humanity was not going to die without a fight. 16 months had passed since construction began. The USS Defiance was almost complete. Captain Daniel Carter stood on the observation deck, watching robots weld the final hull plates into place. The ship was massive, a mountain of metal and technology floating in the darkness of space. Every time Daniel looked at it, he felt a mixture of pride and terror. Commander Kate Morrison joined him at the window. She held 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Daniel. They had developed a routine over the months, meeting here at the end of each day to watch the progress. Power core installation finished this morning, Kate reported. Scott says we're at 70% completion. Another 2 months, and she'll be ready. Daniel sipped his coffee. It was bitter and cold, the way shipyard coffee always was. 2 months. We might not have 2 months. Kate knew what he meant. The Velthari scout ships had been getting closer over the past few weeks. They were testing Earth's defenses, probing for weaknesses. It was only a matter of time before they reported back to their masters. Down in the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Scott Palmer was having the best and worst day of his life. The power core had successfully merged human fusion technology with alien crystal matrices. The energy output was beyond anything he had imagined. The Defiance would have enough power to run a small planet, but something was wrong with the shield generators. The metamaterial hull worked perfectly in tests, absorbing and redirecting energy attacks. The problem was the transition points where the hull met the shield emitters. There was a gap, a weakness that could be exploited. We need more time, Scott muttered, running calculations on his tablet. Another month at least to fix this properly. His assistant, a young woman named Lisa Park, looked up from her console. Sir, I might have a solution. What if we overlap the shield frequencies at the transition points? It's unconventional, but it could close the gap. Scott studied her proposal. It was risky. If the frequencies didn't synchronize correctly, the shields could fail completely. But if it worked, it might just save them. Do it, he said. And pray it works. Dr. Amanda Chen had not slept in 3 days. The cascade drivers were installed and functional, but she had discovered a problem during final testing. The molecular destabilization effect was spreading faster than expected. In simulations, a single shot could potentially trigger a chain reaction that would destroy multiple targets at once. This was either very good or very bad, depending on how it was used. Amanda decided it was good. They needed every advantage they could get. She sent her final report to Captain Carter. The weapons were ready. God help anything that got in their way. In the crew quarters, 800 men and women prepared for a mission they might not survive. They were pilots, gunners, engineers, medics, and soldiers. Each had volunteered, knowing the risks. Each had their own reasons for being here. Lieutenant Greg Santos was a weapons officer who had lost his brother in the first alien attack. He spent his nights studying Velthari tactics, looking for patterns and weaknesses. He had found several and had shared them with the tactical team. Ensign Maria Lopez was a pilot, only 24 years old but already one of the best in the fleet. She could fly anything with engines, and had modified her fighter with enhancements that technically violated regulations. No one complained. They needed every skilled pilot they could get. Dr. Rachel Hayes ran the medical bay. She was calm and practical, preparing for casualties she hoped would never come. Her team had studied Velthari biology using data from the first battle. If they captured any prisoners, they would know how to treat them, or hurt them, if necessary. These were the people who would crew the Defiance. Not soldiers from recruitment posters, but real humans with fears and hopes and families waiting at home. They knew they might never see Earth again. They had made peace with that possibility. Then disaster struck. It happened at 0347 hours, when most of the shipyard was asleep. A formation of Velthari scout ships appeared without warning, jumping out of faster-than-light travel directly into the Neptune orbital zone. There were 30 of them, small and fast, designed for reconnaissance and raiding. Alarms screamed throughout the shipyard. Workers scrambled to emergency stations. Defense platforms powered up their weapons. But everyone knew the terrible truth. The shipyard was not designed to withstand a serious attack. Its defenses were meant to stop pirates and accidents, not military warships. Lieutenant Commander Nicole Reyes commanded the shipyard's defense force. She had 12 patrol ships and 4 weapons platforms. Against 30 Velthari scouts. It was a hopeless fight, but she did not hesitate. All ships, form defensive line, she ordered. Protect the construction bay at all costs. They cannot reach the Defiance. The battle began with a flash of light and death. 2 human patrol ships exploded in the first volley. The Velthari were fast and precise, their weapons cutting through human shields like knives through cloth. Nicole's ship, the USS Vigilant, took heavy damage within minutes. Fire spread through the lower decks. Crew members screamed as they were sucked into space through hull breaches. But Nicole kept fighting, directing her remaining ships with cold determination. Captain Daniel Carter reached the bridge of the incomplete Defiance just as the battle reached its worst point. The ship was not ready. Most systems were still offline. But the main weapons were installed. "Scott," Daniel shouted into his communicator. "Can we power the Cascade drivers?" Scott's voice came back, strained and panicked. "Maybe, but the firing systems aren't calibrated. If we shoot, we might blow ourselves up. Better than letting them destroy us," Daniel replied. "Do it." Power surged through the Defiance's systems. Lights flickered, consoles sparked. The massive ship shuddered as its weapons came online for the first time. Kate Morrison took the weapons console, her hands moving with desperate speed. She targeted the nearest Velthari scout and fired. The Cascade driver worked perfectly. A streak of light crossed the void and struck the alien ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the scout's hull began to crack and twist, molecules separating and reforming in chaotic patterns. The ship tore itself apart from the inside. The other Velthari scouts paused. They had not expected resistance from the unfinished battleship. That hesitation cost them. Kate fired again and again. 5 scouts destroyed in 30 seconds. The remaining enemy ships broke formation. Suddenly afraid, Nicole Reyes saw her opportunity. "All ships, attack! Push them back!" The battle turned. Human ships, inspired by the Defiance's power, fought with renewed energy. The Velthari scouts, designed for speed rather than combat, could not withstand the combined assault. 20 minutes later, it was over. 12 human ships destroyed, over 2,000 crew members dead. But all 30 Velthari scouts had been eliminated. The shipyard was damaged but intact. The Defiance had survived. Captain Carter stood on the bridge, surrounded by smoke and chaos. His hands were shaking. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. Admiral Patricia Lane contacted him within the hour. Her face was grim on the communication screen. "Captain, I'm afraid I have bad news. Our intelligence indicates the main Velthari invasion fleet is already moving. They'll be here in 3 weeks." 3 weeks, Daniel repeated. "The Defiance isn't ready." "Then make it ready," Patricia said. "Because that ship is all that stands between Earth and extinction." The communication ended. Daniel looked at his crew, at the damaged ship around him, at the stars outside the window. 3 weeks to finish the impossible. 3 weeks to prepare for the fight of humanity's existence. They got to work immediately. The Velthari invasion fleet arrived on a Tuesday morning. 2,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in a flash of light that could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. They filled the space between Mars and Jupiter like a cloud of glowing crystals, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a continent. Emperor Valdrix himself stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He had decided to personally oversee humanity's extinction. This primitive species had embarrassed his empire. They had killed his soldiers and destroyed his ships. He would watch them burn and enjoy every moment. High Admiral Zyrith stood beside him, still carrying the shame of his first defeat. He had requested command of the attack fleet to redeem himself. The Emperor had granted his request, but with a warning: failure would mean death. "Begin the attack," Valdrix commanded. "Leave nothing alive." On Earth, sirens wailed in every city. People rushed to underground shelters built over the past 18 months. Children cried. Parents tried to stay calm. Everyone looked up at the sky and wondered if this was their last day. Admiral Patricia Lane commanded the defense from Earth Command, a bunker buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She had 41 ships to defend an entire planet. The USS Resolute, repaired and upgraded, led the defense fleet. But without the Defiance, they all knew the truth. They were buying time, not winning battles. The human fleet formed a defensive line near the moon. They spread out in a formation designed to make targeting difficult. Every captain knew this was likely a one-way mission. They had said goodbye to their families. They had made peace with their gods. Now they waited for death. Then something appeared on the sensors. Something massive. The USS Defiance emerged from behind Saturn, where it had been hiding while completing final repairs. It was not fully operational. Systems were still being calibrated. Some sections had no power, but it was ready enough to fight. Captain Daniel Carter sat in his command chair, surrounded by his crew. Commander Kate Morrison handled tactical operations. Lieutenant Greg Santos managed the weapons systems. Ensign Maria Lopez coordinated the fighter squadrons. Every person was exactly where they needed to be. "All hands, this is the captain," Daniel announced over the ship's speakers. "In a few minutes, we will engage an enemy fleet of 2,000 ships. They have come to destroy our home, kill our families, and erase humanity from the galaxy. We are not going to let that happen. Today, we show the universe what humans are capable of. Today, we fight." The crew responded with cheers. Fear transformed into determination. They were terrified, but they were also ready. High Admiral Zyrith noticed the Defiance immediately. His 4 eyes widened as he studied the sensor data. The human battleship was enormous, far larger than anything they should have been able to build. Its energy readings were off the scale. "All ships, focus fire on that vessel," he ordered. "Destroy it before it can engage." 300 Velthari warships turned their weapons toward the Defiance. They fired simultaneously, sending thousands of energy beams across space. The combined firepower could have cracked a moon in half. The beams hit the Defiance's hull. The metamaterial absorbed the energy, glowing white-hot but refusing to break. The shields held. The ship shook but did not fall. "Return fire," Captain Carter commanded. Kate Morrison activated the cascade drivers. 8 massive weapons fired at once, sending projectiles across the void at nearly the speed of light. The shots hit their targets with perfect accuracy. The molecular destabilization spread faster than anyone expected. Each Velthari ship that was hit began to crumble, its structure failing at the atomic level. But it did not stop there. The effect jumped from ship to ship through their crystal hulls, spreading like a disease. 67 Velthari warships were destroyed in the first minute of combat. Emperor Valdrix watched in disbelief. His mouth opened, but no words came out. This was impossible. One ship could not possess such power. One species could not develop such weapons in mere years. The humans had accomplished what no civilization had done in 12,000 years. They had made the Velthari afraid. "What is that thing?" Valdrix whispered. No one had an answer. The battle became chaos. Velthari ships attacked from all directions, trying to overwhelm the Defiance with numbers. The human battleship absorbed punishment that would have destroyed any other vessel. Its shields flickered and failed in sections, but the metamaterial hull held. Damage accumulated, but systems stayed online. Lieutenant Greg Santos worked the weapons console with focused intensity. He had memorized every Velthari weakness, every pattern in their tactics. He called out targets to the gunners, prioritizing ships that posed the greatest threat. His brother's death had given him purpose. Today, he would honor that memory. Ensign Maria Lopez launched her fighters into the battle. The small craft darted between the massive warships, drawing fire away from the Defiance. They died quickly, but each second they bought was precious. Maria coordinated their movements, sacrificing some to save others, making impossible choices at impossible speed. Dr. Rachel Hayes worked in the medical bay as injured crew members flooded in. Burns, broken bones, radiation exposure. She treated them as fast as she could, sending the ones who could still function back to their stations. There was no time for rest. There was no time for grief. There was only survival. The battle raged for 6 hours, the longest 6 hours in human history. Human losses were catastrophic. 28 ships destroyed. Over 15,000 crew members dead. The USS Resolute was crippled, floating dead in space with its surviving crew awaiting rescue. The defense fleet was reduced to scattered remnants, but the Velthari losses were worse. Much worse. When Emperor Valdrix finally ordered a retreat, only 400 of his ships remained functional, 1,600 warships destroyed by a single battleship. The greatest military defeat in Velthari history. The surviving alien ships fled, jumping to faster-than-light speed and disappearing into the void. The Defiance pursued them to the edge of the solar system, firing until the last enemy was gone. Then silence. Captain Daniel Carter sat in his chair, unable to move. His body was exhausted. His mind was numb. Around him, the bridge was filled with smoke and sparks. Crew members slumped at their stations, too tired to celebrate. Kate Morrison approached him slowly. Her face was streaked with blood and tears. Her voice was barely a whisper. "We won," Daniel nodded. "We won." He activated the communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. His voice was calm, but carried weight that reached across the stars. "This is Captain Daniel Carter of the USS Defiance. To any Velthari forces receiving this message, you came to our home to destroy us. You failed. If you return, you will fail again. Humanity will not surrender. Humanity will not submit. We are not your prey anymore." He paused, looking out at the stars, at the debris of the battle, at the distant blue dot that was Earth. "We are coming for you." The message ended. On Earth, people emerged from their shelters and looked up at the sky. They had survived. Against all odds, against an enemy that had conquered the galaxy, they had survived. In the Crystal Palace on the Velthari homeworld, Emperor Valdrix sat alone on his throne. His advisors had fled, afraid of his anger. His fleet was shattered. His pride was broken. He had underestimated the humans. He had thought them weak and primitive. He had been wrong. And now, for the first time in 12,000 years, the Velthari Empire faced an enemy it might not be able to defeat. News of the Battle of Sol spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Species that had been conquered by the Velthari for thousands of years heard the impossible story. A young species, barely capable of space travel, had destroyed 1,600 warships. They had beaten back an invasion led by the Emperor himself. They had done what no one had ever done before. And suddenly, the galaxy was not afraid anymore. Rebellion erupted on a dozen worlds within weeks of the battle. The Kethrani, a species of insect-like beings who had been enslaved for 3,000 years, rose against their Velthari masters. The Dorvani, peaceful traders who had been forced to serve the Empire, refused to pay tribute. The Shalath, warriors whose ancestors had been conquered centuries ago, found their old weapons and remembered how to fight. The Velthari Empire began to crack. On Earth, the celebrations were mixed with grief. 15,000 soldiers had died defending their planet. Memorial services were held in every city. Names were read aloud. Tears were shed. Heroes were remembered. Captain Daniel Carter attended the largest memorial, held in New York City. He stood on a stage before millions of people. Wearing his dress uniform covered in medals he felt he did not deserve, the crowd looked at him like he was a god. He felt like a man who had simply refused to die. He gave a speech about courage and sacrifice. He talked about the crew members who had given their lives. He talked about the families who would never see their loved ones again. He talked about the price of survival. When he finished, the crowd was silent for a long moment. Then they began to cheer. A sound that rose like thunder and echoed across the city. Daniel left the stage and found Kate Morrison waiting for him. She had been promoted to captain herself, given command of the repaired USS Resolute. They had served together through the worst moments of human history. Now they stood together at the beginning of something new. "The Admiral wants to see us," Kate said. "Both of us." They traveled to Earth Command, where Admiral Patricia Lane waited with news that would change everything. She looked tired but hopeful, a combination Daniel had not seen on her face before. "We've received visitors," Patricia explained. 3 alien species. They want to meet with humanity's leaders. Daniel blinked. "Visitors? Here?" Their ships arrived yesterday. They claim to be enemies of the Velthari, species that have been fighting in secret for centuries. They saw what we did. They want to form an alliance. The meeting took place in Geneva, in a building that had once housed the United Nations. Now it would host something far larger. Representatives from 3 alien civilizations sat across from humanity's leaders, ready to discuss the future of the galaxy. The Kethrani ambassador was a tall insect creature with compound eyes that reflected the room in 1,000 fragments. She spoke with clicking sounds that were translated by a small device. "We have watched your battle. We have studied your weapons. You have achieved what we could not. We offer our resources, our knowledge, our soldiers. Together, we can break the Velthari forever." The Dorvani ambassador was smaller, covered in blue scales that shimmered in the light. His voice was soft, but determined. "My people control the trade routes of 12 sectors. We can supply your ships, feed your armies, move your forces. The Velthari depend on our commerce. Without us, their empire will starve." The Shalath ambassador was the most impressive. She was massive, over 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and a face covered in battle scars. Her people had once been the greatest warriors in the galaxy before the Velthari defeated them. "Give us weapons," she said simply. "Give us ships. Give us a chance to reclaim our honor. We will fight beside you until the last Velthari is dead." President Bennett looked at Daniel, who sat beside him as a military advisor. "Captain, what do you think?" Daniel considered the question carefully. These aliens were strangers. Their motives were unclear. Trust was dangerous. But humanity could not defeat the Velthari alone. They needed allies. "I think we don't have a choice," Daniel said. "We either stand together or fall separately." The Coalition of Free Worlds was formally established 6 months later. Humanity, the youngest spacefaring species in the sector, found itself leading an alliance of 4 civilizations. It was strange and terrifying, and wonderful all at once. Construction began on 20 new battleships, each one based on the Defiance design. Dr. Amanda Chen led a team of scientists from multiple species, combining technologies that had never been used together. The Kathrani provided advanced materials. The Dorvani provided navigation systems. The Shalath provided combat strategies developed over millennia of warfare. The result was a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Daniel Carter was promoted to admiral and given command of the Coalition's combined forces. He stood on the bridge of the newly completed USS Liberty, the first of the new battleships, and looked out at the stars he would soon be fighting to protect. Kate Morrison commanded the Resolute, now upgraded with Coalition technology. Lieutenant Greg Santos had been promoted to commander and given his own ship. Ensign Maria Lopez led a squadron of elite fighters, the best pilots from 4 species. Dr. Rachel Hayes ran the largest mobile medical facility in the fleet. These were the people who would carry humanity into the stars. Not conquerors, but liberators. Not destroyers, but defenders. Meanwhile, the Velthari Empire continued to collapse. Emperor Valdrix faced rebellion from his own people, military officers who blamed him for the disaster at Sol. Civil war seemed inevitable. The ancient empire that had ruled for 12,000 years was tearing itself apart. High Admiral Xyrith, disgraced but alive, sent a secret message to Earth. He offered information in exchange for sanctuary. He wanted to defect. The Coalition debated for days before accepting. Xyrith arrived at Earth under heavy guard, carrying data that revealed the location of every Velthari military installation, every supply depot, every weakness in their defenses. It was the greatest intelligence coup in history. Admiral Daniel Carter met with Xyrith one evening, in a quiet room overlooking the ocean. The alien who had first attacked Earth sat across from the man who had defended it. They studied each other with careful eyes. "Why?" Daniel asked. "Why betray your people?" Xyrith was silent for a long moment. "Because they are not my people anymore. The empire I served no longer exists. Valdrix has gone mad. He speaks of destroying entire planets, killing billions, burning the galaxy to keep his throne. I cannot be part of that." He looked at Daniel with something like respect. "Your species should not exist. You should have died when I first attacked. Instead, you fought. You survived. You grew stronger. I have lived 300 years and conquered 100 worlds. I have never seen anything like humanity." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then help us end this. Help us bring peace to the galaxy." "Peace," Xyrith repeated, as if testing the word. "The Velthari do not understand peace. We only understand power. But perhaps that can change. Perhaps you can teach us." 1 year after the Battle of Sol, the Coalition of Free Worlds launched its first offensive. A fleet of 50 ships, led by the USS Liberty, jumped into Velthari space. Their target was a military station that had been used to launch countless attacks against innocent worlds. The battle was swift and decisive. Coalition forces destroyed the station and liberated 3 planets that had been under Velthari control for centuries. The freed populations wept with joy. They had never believed rescue would come. Admiral Daniel Carter watched the celebrations from his bridge. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. 2 years ago, he had been a simple commander on a patrol ship. Now he led a fleet that was changing the galaxy. Kate Morrison contacted him from the Resolute. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel smiled. "I'm thinking about how far we've come, and how far we still have to go." "The Velthari won't give up easily," Kate reminded him. "No," Daniel agreed. "They won't, but neither will we." He looked out at the stars, at the liberated worlds, at the fleet that carried the hopes of billions. Humanity had risen from nothing to become the most important species in the galaxy. They had done it through determination, creativity, and an absolute refusal to surrender. The age of human expansion had begun, and the universe would never be the same.